welcome to one and all to ESG Risk AI's second edition of its annual award ceremony, the ESG India Leadership Awards 2022, presented to you by ESG Risk Assessments and Insights and Equity Group. My name is Sohini Majumdar and I will be your host for this evening. It is encouraging to witness such a large participation, and I thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be a part of this event today. Before we start, a short background about ESG Risk AI. We are India's first ESG rating provider and a pioneer in bringing ESG assessments to investors and corporates. ESG Risk AI is promoted by Equity Ratings and Research, which is a SEBI-registered full-service rating agency promoted by India's largest banks and global data and analytics major DNB. We are signatories to UN Principles for Responsible Investment, that is the UNPRI, and member of the Global Reporting Initiative, GRI. ESG Risk AI's ESG rating framework assesses companies' sustainability performance in accordance with the relevant ESG compliances, standards, and framework, both domestic as well as global. We are also the first company in India to have rated top 1,000 listed companies as per market capitalization. This is by far the largest coverage on Indian companies by any company. Our taxonomy factors in 1,000 indicators covering environment, social, and governance material issues for across 54 industries. Our clients can access comprehensive real-time ESG performance reports with the ESG 360-degree subscription platform of ESG Risk AI. We are proud to say that ESG Risk AI is empaneled with AMFI as the ESG rating provider to the mutual fund industry in India and also a part of SEBI's ESG Advisory Committee. Let us now delve into the agenda for today. We are about to experience a celebration of India Incorporation's ESG performance and felicitate those companies that have integrated sustainability into their core business practices. I'm also delighted to share that we are joined by an excellent lineup of distinguished speakers that include policymakers, non-profits, international organizations, and ESG-focused corporates. Together, they will provide a 360-degree perspective into the global and Indian ESG landscape. We will also witness the unveiling of the ESG Yearbook 2022, Indian ESG Landscape, which is a comprehensive assessment of the top 1,000 listed companies across 54 industries on their ESG performance. Post this event, it will be available for download on our website. Let us kickstart today's event. It is my honor to invite Mr. Shankar Chakraborty, Chairman ESG Risk AI and Group CEO, Equity Ratings and Research, to welcome all our guests and initiate today's event. Over to you, Shankar.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am proud to welcome you to the second edition of ESG India Leadership Awards to celebrate the growth of Indian companies in the ESG space. We would like to acknowledge excellence in companies' efforts in managing their ESG risk effectively, which does not only affect their own long-term business operations, but also the overall sustainable economic development of the country. When ESG Risk AI began its journey 3 years back, through consultations with various stakeholders, we sensed a kind of skepticism. Many investors told us Indian corporates have poor track record in terms of disclosures. Some lenders anticipated risk of greenwashing to affect data quality, and a few corporates even questioned the need for an Indian ESG rating company and thought ESG is just another fad. Instead of being discouraged by this kind of feedback, we actually sensed an opportunity to make a difference. We felt making ESG frameworks accessible to Indian businesses and investors would be a worthwhile mission to pursue. ESG as a risk measurement and mitigation tool in India has come a long way since then. SEBI enhanced their BRR disclosure norms and came up with a much more comprehensive disclosure standard, BRSR. BRSR disclosures will make high-quality data on sustainability performance and practices of companies available to public. Banks and even forward-thinking NBFCs have started incorporating ESG factors in their credit evaluation process. AMFI came up with guidelines for ESG rating providers to mutual funds and empaneled ESG Risk AI as an ESG rating provider. ESG Risk AI complemented these developments by coming up with rating coverage of 1,000 plus top Indian listed companies across 54 industries. Today, ESG Risk AI has access to the most comprehensive database of ESG data and has developed a detailed taxonomy with 1,000 plus indicators. Today, we not only assess listed companies, but also unlisted companies, private entities, and a few global companies. As we completed our analysis of 1,000 plus companies and dissected the data threadbare, it became clear that there are great achievements of Indian corporates to talk about. We believe ESG investing is much more than a short-term fad. Demand for sustainable investing is coming from regulatory push as countries seek to efficiently utilize capital to meet their sustainability commitments. Investors, from individuals to large institutions, are allocating an ever-increasing share of their portfolios towards sustainable strategies. A study by Harvard highlighted that inflows into ESG funds continued to grow in 2021, surpassing 2020's total inflows of $51.1 billion US before the end of Q3 in 2021. The report estimates that there are more than $330 billion in assets under management in various ESG funds globally, with the creation of more ESG funds expected in 2022. Additionally, over $500 billion flowed into ESG integrated funds in 2021, contributing to a 55% growth in assets under management in some kind of ESG integrated products. Today, a lot of businesses already see the need of addressing ESG concerns because they understand that responsible resource management, being fair to all stakeholders, and environmental stewardship are the only ways to achieve sustainable long-term success. For instance, talking about a recent initiative taken by Deutsche Bank, wherein all major suppliers of products and services will be required to undergo an ESG assessment, with new contracts only approved for vendors that meet a minimum sustainability score starting 2023. On the other hand, AMCs are incorporating ESG practices in their lending decisions. HSBC AMC has implemented a framework that incorporates ESG issues throughout the investment process to get a holistic view of all the investee companies to ensure informed and sustainable investment decisions. Governments continue to play a crucial role too, to motivate businesses to fulfill their ESG duties and to persuade investors towards sustainable investing. Supportive government policy and cogent legislation are essential. Our Honorable PM has committed India to become net zero by 2070. This makes the outlook of Indian markets very, very positive as a nation that can benefit from the technological advancements required to achieve net zero emissions. We believe that ESG Risk AI will catalyze this transformation by encouraging responsible businesses through these awards and help investors and corporates understand where they stand with the ratings. On behalf of Equity Group and ESG Risk AI, I thank you for being here today and for showing great support through the year. Let the celebrations begin now. Thank you.
Thank you for that wonderful welcome speech. I now welcome our keynote speaker, Ms. Usha Thorat. Ms. Thorat is the chairperson of SEBI's Advisory Committee on Mutual Funds. She also chairs the Financial Benchmarks India Private Limited, an entity set up by the instance of the RBI to administer benchmarks in the foreign exchange and fixed income markets. She is an independent director on the board of Sanofi India Limited and is a member of the Fund Trustee Advisory Commission of the Kerala Infrastructure Investment Fund Board. Ms. Thorat is a trustee of the Indian Cancer Society and heads its Cancer Cure Fund. She chairs the Lotus Medical Foundation, Kolhapur, which works on HIV/AIDS issues. As chairperson of the Board of Governors of the Foundation for Ecological Security, she takes a keen interest in sustainable development. A former deputy governor and executive director of the RBI, Ms. Thorat has headed almost all areas of central banking and banking regulation. With a career spanning over 4 decades, she spent over 38 years at RBI and has played a pivotal role in promoting RBI's efforts on financial inclusion. Post retiring from RBI, she served on numerous important committees of RBI and became director of the Center for Advanced Financial Research and Learning, an organization set up by RBI as a center of excellence for research and learning. Ms. Thorat is an alumna of Lady Shriram College for Women and the Delhi School of Economics. We are honored to have her as our keynote speaker. Over to you, Ms. Thorat.
Ladies and gentlemen, the subject today is ESG, Environment, Social Governance. But I want to start with the lessons of COVID. COVID-19 made us realize a number of things. How the world is so interconnected and interdependent. How so much of work can be done remotely from home with the new technologies and pace of digitization. How so much of travel can be avoided. How important an undisturbed supply chain for food and medicines is. How the pandemic was iniquitous in its impact. The poor suffered the most. How we learned to value our home health, our health workers, the sanitation workers. How the sky seemed brighter. How we breathed better air. And how we started seeing more wild animals and birds. How our savings grew as we realized how much of what we consumed was not necessary. How in just 3 years of COVID, the number of natural calamities and unusual weather events seemed to have increased. COVID has also made us wonder about a number of things, including whether it is possible to have a post-COVID world that is more humane, more equitable, and more sustainable. I hope it has also made us realize that if we slip back into our pre-COVID habits of excess consumption and energy use, we are at the risk of entering into a dangerous harakiri world. The quote from the closing scenes of Jurassic Park says it all. How many times do you need to see the evidence? How many times must the point be made? We are causing our own extinction. Too many red lines have been crossed. We are going to have to adjust to new threats we can't even imagine. We have entered a new era. Long before the world reached this point, on a horizon of relentless pursuit of wealth, Gandhiji had warned. A technological society has two choices. First, it can wait until catastrophic failures expose systemic deficiencies, distortion, and self-deception. Secondly, a culture can provide social checks and balances to correct for systemic distortion prior to catastrophic failures. How does all this link with ESG? The focus on environment, social, and governance has gained importance as there's increasing recognition that we are continuing to follow an unsustainable model of development and growth, and that companies need to be mindful of the E, S, and G aspects in their own long-term interest. There are some very important underlying factors that have resulted in the present state of affairs and explain why focus on ESG has become inevitable for international bodies, for governments, for regulators, for producers, and consumers. First is the way in which we recognize progress and improvement in well-being through particular consumption patterns that are valorized without any regard for the social and ecological costs of producing them. Countries' progress is assessed just by economic growth, just per capita GDP, to the detriment of human development and ecological indicators. A strangely paradoxical situation where development as growth undercuts development as well-being. The pursuit of the current benchmarks of consumption, made possible by technology, has led to overexploitation of natural resources, damaged and polluted the environment, and resulted in climate change and loss of biodiversity. Second, the current take, make, waste model of development has generated waste that is largely non-recyclable, with huge detrimental impact on the planet, especially the oceans. The wasteful use of resources is an outcome of normalizing production logic that is built around planned obsolescence. In US, I believe, To 99% of material used in the consumption basket is trashed within 6 months. This model of development is propelled by businesses, by markets, by media, by advertising, and social media. The singular focus on profit motive, and this is my third point, and stock prices have taken away the moral compass and ethics in business and corporate governance standards that ignore societal and environmental considerations and do not necessarily work in the interest of stakeholders. Fourth, growing inequality in society has highlighted the diminishing share of the pie for workers and employees, other than the top earners, women, and marginalized sections of the society. The post lockdown recovery has made an unequal world even more unequal. Labor practices and employment have scant regard for human rights and principles of equity and justice. Supply chains that ignore health and safety and follow inhuman practices are used by some of the biggest brands. Suppression and exploitation of women continues to be the rule. Other risks that are becoming important are threats to privacy, especially data privacy. Fifth, with huge money being committed for green finance and ESG, especially after Glasgow, there is a new source of risk driven by the same profit motive, namely greenwashing, that exposes several large companies raising money in the name of ESG, but actually using the money for increasing ESG risk. This brings in the need for independent watchdogs or society's conscience keepers. What has been done by governments and businesses to stem the escalation of ESG risks? The Paris Agreement of 2016 represents the most concrete global commitment to address climate change. To achieve the long-term temperature goal, countries aim to reach peaking greenhouse gas emissions as soon as possible to achieve a climate neutral world by mid-century. The Paris Agreement reaffirms that developed countries should take the lead, and in Glasgow, COP26, countries ultimately agreed to a provision calling for a phase down of coal power and a phase out of inefficient fossil fuel subsidies. Private financial institutions and central banks announced moves to realign trillions of dollars towards achieving global net zero emissions. Governments have used a variety of fiscal and administrative measures to move businesses to lower environmental risk. Many countries like Argentina, Canada, Chile, China, Colombia, EU, UK, New Zealand have adopted a carbon tax. Where the additional cost of various policies will eventually fall depends on the policy package, and clearly there is a need for a policy toolbox. Last March, the SEC announced new environmental, social, and governance disclosure requirements for companies. Similarly, in Europe, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive was adapted to publish regular standardized reports on companies' environmental and social impact activities from the year 2023 onwards. In line with these global developments, in India, the Securities Exchange Board of India introduced new requirements for sustainability reporting by listed companies. The new format, the Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report, the BRSR, aims to establish links between the financial results of a business and its ESG performance. SEBI has mandated that BRSR will be applicable to the top 1,000 listed entities by market capitalization on a mandatory basis from financial year 22-23, and as a regulatory tool, it will bring standardization in ESG frameworks and standards. All listed and non-banking companies are governed by the BRSR guidelines of SEBI. In addition, in July 22, RBI has issued a discussion paper on sustainable finance for evolving an appropriate regulatory framework for entities regulated by it. So far, the national and the global approach has been voluntary and not mandatory. It's a matter of debate whether after decades of trying this approach, and commitments approach with negligible impact. Is there a need for governments and regulators to be more coercive? What are the incentives for good behavior and disincentives for bad behavior? How can accountability be fixed and the guilty punished? ESG ratings is an area that is now in keeping with this policy approach of providing disclosures on the company's ESG policies and practices. I am told the ratings assessment of ESG risk AI provides the BRSR score and transparency scores of companies, helping them to identify disclosure gaps. It is a unique aspect of the methodology. Also, the methodology has got embedded industry-specific materiality of indicators. For example, for an IT firm, data privacy and security, diversity and inclusion are critical issues, whereas for a mining company, biodiversity impact, rehabilitation and resettlement are critical. There is also a need for government and industry to sit together to prioritize what are the most important metrics in ESG. Rating agencies should then give more weight to these in their ratings. For example, water efficiency should get as much importance as energy efficiency. Air and water, and this is very important in India, air and water pollution should get high priority. Direct and indirect impact should be factored in. For example, sugar mills using water guzzling sugarcane. The ratings and scores also depend largely on what is disclosed and their veracity. The importance of being vigilant about the accuracy makes ratings a critical force for safeguarding our world. This is where rating agencies will have to resort to out-of-the-box tools to verify the information provided. A recent book that looks into Foxconn factory in China, which produces Apple phones and other Apple products, describes the exploited nature of the work and the inhumane conditions in the factories. Independent think tanks and investigative journalists have exposed how there has been a misuse of the sustainability label. For example, H&M runs several sustainability campaigns, including a conscious collection, which claims to use sustainable and recycled fabrics, but was found to use mostly synthetic material. Similarly, trends were also found in brands like ASOS and Marks and Spencers, which are dominating commercial fashion markets now. Recent exposures by the think tank Global Witness have shown how companies that were destroying forests had indeed issued green bonds and used the money for deforestation. Satellite images using drones are now being checked to check out the veracity of greening claims. Such information need to become part of the toolkit for rating agencies, used carefully after due diligence. Governments will need to seriously consider the measures that are needed to accelerate the move towards a more sustainable economic system, as time is indeed running out. To quote from David Attenborough, surely we have a responsibility to care for our planet. The future of humanity, and indeed all life on earth, now depends on us. Despite all I have said, humanity did overcome COVID. We did rise to the occasion, however imperfectly. We have also learned how to consume less and travel less and cherish human values. It is encouraging to see Indian boards of companies giving priority to ESG. Examples such as Tesla will hasten this trend. After its addition in 2020, Tesla is no longer part of the S&P ESG index due to its transgressions. It is equally encouraging to see the work around ESG ratings take off, each year bringing in new actors, better indices, and more robust and precise rating systems. I believe the awards is a landmark event where best industry practices are showcased. It will help India journey towards the sustainable goals. Congratulations to all the winners for their commendable ESG practices. Thank you.
Wow, that was so insightful. Thank you, Ms. Thorat, for that invaluable keynote address explaining the regulatory aspects of BRSR framework. I'm sure this will help our audience understand the importance of ESG and plan better strategies. Moving on to our next speaker, allow me to introduce Mr. N.S. Vishwanathan. Mr. Vishwanathan has served at the RBI for nearly 4 decades in various roles, including Deputy Governor, Executive Director, and Direct Recruit Officer. He's a chairman of Acuity Ratings and Research Limited and a senior fellow at the Center for Public Policy at IIM Bangalore. As a Deputy Governor of RBI, he represented India as a member of the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision, Financial Stability Board, and some of its subcommittees. Mr. Vishwanathan was also a member of the Expert Committee on Economic Capital Framework for the RBI and a member and later co-chairman of FSB Regional Consultative Group for Asia. I now request Mr. Vishwanathan to take over.
At the outset, I thank ESG AI for giving me an opportunity to share my thoughts on importance of corporate governance. At a definitional level, corporate governance is described as the system of rules, processes and procedures put in place by which a firm is directed and controlled. At a practical level, it essentially involves balancing the interest of different stakeholders, which will include shareholders, executive management team, customers, suppliers, lenders, government and the community at large. I am of the firm opinion that corporate governance makes a fundamental difference to how a unit, whether it is social unit like a family or an economic unit like an enterprise, a politico-economic unit like a province or a nation performs. While economic resources are important for the functioning of any economic unit, it is the governance that determines how well those resources are put to use. For example, capital is important for an enterprise, but if that enterprise is not well governed or is poorly governed, it will be a matter of time before those resources get frittered away. We have examples abounding of how nations which are not necessarily well endowed in natural resources are able to have high economic prosperity. Similarly, we have nations with highly endowed natural resources which are not necessarily economically prosperous. And the fundamental difference that makes a country rich and poor, apart from the economic resources that it has in its possession, is the quality of governance of that country. Same thing we can say with respect to any unit, whether it is family, state or a nation, as I said mentioned earlier. Fundamentally, good governance requires the various layers of the governing structure to understand and perform their respective roles effectively. In the case of a corporate, the topmost layer in the governance structure is the shareholders, which appoints the which elects the board of directors. The board of directors in turn appoint the executive management, some of which may in turn require approval of the shareholders. The board of directors draws up the policies and processes based on which the executive management team has to run the organization. The policies and processes should have a proper feedback mechanism to assure the board that the laid down framework is adhered to. There must be a laid down process for dealing with deviations. It is important to understand that there is a hierarchical relationship between the shareholders and the board and between the board and the executive management because the board reports to the shareholders and the executive management reports to the board. However, this relationship is not just purely hierarchical but a little more nuanced. It is therefore important for these layers of governance to understand this difference and ensure that one does not tread into the jurisdiction of the other. The organizations which understand this very clearly are the ones that are likely to succeed as a business enterprise. For example, overreach of the shareholders can impede the functioning of the board. Similarly, board getting no say into what the executive management does will impede the ability of the executive management to act as per the rules and procedures laid down and innovate. The board should be more concerned about governance, and the job of running the organization should be left to the executive management. Let me now elaborate a little on the difference between governance and running an organization. Governing will include putting in place a strategy for achieving the objectives of the organization, drawing up policies that will inform the interaction between and with internal, external stakeholders, and a feedback mechanism to ensure that these policies and procedures are adhered to. Where there are laws, rules and regulations put in place by the government, the policies and procedures should be conforming to those requirements. Importantly, the board should have a proper risk governance framework, understand its risk universe, have a proper risk appetite in place, and have a risk tolerance limits together with a mechanism to deal with deviations. It must create a proper incentive system for the executive management to work towards achieving the objectives of the organization consistent with the risk framework that the board has put in place. No policies and procedures are of use unless there is a mechanism for feedback on whether those policies and procedures are being adhered to or not. Internal controls and internal audit form an important part of this feedback mechanism. It is a cliche that internal audit is the ears and eyes of the board or the management. But what use if the ears don't hear and the eyes don't see? Which is why the action taken on the feedback provided by the internal audit mechanism is very important. The quality of internal audit and the actions taken thereon will inform how well an organization is governed. Let me also add that the quality and effectiveness of internal audit and control is enhanced by the internal audit function being independent of the executive management, which is why in most places, in most organizations, the audit committee is headed by an independent board member, and very often most members of the audit committee are independent board members, and at least majority of them are at least non-executive board members to ensure that this independence is available. Within this framework of policies and procedures and strategies put in place by the board, the executive management should be allowed freedom to operate and space to innovate within that. The board should have a mechanism for regular reporting of actions taken by the executive management to assure itself that its policies and procedures and strategies are being executed in an appropriate manner by the executive management. And this should be buttressed by the assurance mechanism, which will include the internal audit and internal controls that are in place. Once someone asked me, what are the characteristics of a good board? Of course, it's extremely difficult to provide a comprehensive list of features of a good board, but let me mention some those come at the top of my mind in this regard. For me, the board must have a proper mix of independent, non-executive and executive board members. And of course, the non-executive board members should be larger than the executive board members. My preference is for the chairman to be a non-executive board member, but there might be circumstances where the chairman and chief executive may be the same person. The idea is that when both these are in the same person, that person becomes extremely powerful, and that might not be necessarily good for good corporate governance. Second, the board must have the required number of committees to assist it. It must actually comprise of people who together bring the required skills, knowledge and understanding of the business of the enterprise. So it doesn't mean that everybody knows everything, but as a group they are able to direct the functioning of the organization towards the achievement of the organizational goals, including business objectives. Fourth, there is no one dominant member in the board. It's very, very important to me because apart from there being no dominant member, we shouldn't have a situation where any board member is beholden to anyone else in the board. This could have very deleterious consequences for the organization. There are examples abound globally, for that matter, where very powerful chief executives who were held in awe by the rest of the board members have, despite them being well-intentioned, taken the organization downhill. That happens because if there's one dominant board member, that board member becomes more important than the institution itself. And two, when there is no one to challenge that board member, then the board ceases to be a group of individuals, but it becomes a set of people who endorse the ideas and thoughts put in place by one person. And that's something which we must avoid. All important issues are deliberated adequately, and the minutes reveal the factors based on which a particular decision has been arrived at. Ideally, most decisions are taken unanimously, but I'm not too sure that unanimity should be an objective by itself. Of course, there should be space for dissent, and ultimately, what the board feels is the best for the organization should be taken forward. I say this because if unanimity is the only basis on which decisions are taken, there could be undue pressure on the person who has a dissenting view to join the rest, and then the board does not get the benefit of the alternate view. Number two, the other outcome of that could be that just because some one person dissents and the board has taken a view that it won't pursue any decision that is not unanimously approved, then it could be that good ideas are shelved just because there is one person who did not like it for maybe good reasons or bad. But it's important to understand that yes, unanimity is good, but I don't think it need necessarily be an objective in itself. Of course, members should ask relevant questions of the executive management to come to the decisions that they need to come to. Next point is something I want to very importantly mention, because while it is important to understand that change is needed, and therefore change per se should not be opposed. There's also something where one must be very careful in accepting a change easily, because one must assess whether a change is proposed just because the executive management does not like it, or the change is for the better for the organization. I have come across cases where changes proposed have got accepted by the board, but they have not necessarily been the right changes. Rather, it gave more powers in the executive management's hands than was possibly warranted, and the lack of deliberation on this issue by the board could result in the board accepting changes which may not be in the interest of the organization. A good board should be very, very sensitive to censures or penalties or any such communication that is issued by a regulator. Where the activity like finance services is under the purview of a special regulator, the communication from that regulator should be taken very seriously. Every case of violation, deviation or censure or penalty should be analyzed both from the point of view of assessing and determining accountability for those deviations, and also to fix the problem so that they do not recur. I emphasize the importance of feedback as a part of good governance, and in this context highlighted the importance of internal audit, internal controls, and therefore a good board will take seriously the feedback that comes to it from various sources, including the actions taken by the management on the directions given by the board. So, and if required, the board must take necessary measures to correct the management if the board is feeling that the management is not taking actions as per the laid down policies, procedures, or in accordance with directions given by it. There is always a difference between one who complies and one who excels. Most standards laid down by law, regulations, and rules are minimum expectations. And when one goes beyond that, that is when effort is made to excel. One specific area where excellence can be very clearly visible would be in disclosures. For instance, disclosures can be more than what is minimum standards required. Second, there's always a difference between fact and truth. Let me elaborate this with a small example. A 200% rise in profits may be a fact, but that it has gone from 2 crores to 4 crores is the truth. So it's important that efforts are not made to hide the truth by just stating the facts. So importance of truthfulness of disclosures is more significant than pure factfulness of the disclosures. Equally important is how the organization responds to various adverse commentaries about it. Is there an effort to shroud its responses in legalese? Is there an effort to make people understand what the problem is? Is there an effort to even admit an issue if it is there? Because I think it's much better to be truthful rather than trying to hide the truth behind legalese and facts. So I think some of these things will make a difference between a purely compliant organization and an organization that tries to excel in its corporate governance responsibilities. In today's world, sustainability and responsibility to a society has gained much more significance than ever before, which is why ESG has become a concept by itself. The board will be the driving force in ensuring that the enterprise adopts ESG and makes that a part of its functioning. And that is when an organization will move in the path of success, both as an enterprise, as an economic unit, and as a socially responsible entity. Before I sign off, I want to congratulate all the award winners and also want to convey my best wishes to endeavors of all of you as you move towards adopting ESG and raising the quality of governance of your enterprise to become excellent organizations rather than just merely compliant organizations. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vishwanathan. Your perspectives on corporate governance were very insightful. You have helped deepen our understanding of the relationship between shareholders and the board of directors, especially the interplay of the role of the board and good governance practices. We now move to our next speaker, Mr. Dhruba Purkayastha. Mr. Purkayastha is the India Director for Climate Policy Initiative, a global non-profit research and advisory institution working on sustainable finance, and the Program Director for US-India Clean Energy Finance Facility, a project preparation and pipeline development facility for distributed renewable energy projects in India. Earlier, he worked with the IFC, that is the International Finance Corporation, as a program manager for investment climate advisory, and with the World Bank as a senior specialist in South Asia finance, amongst others. He has over 25 years of experience in credit rating, management consulting, investment banking, and international development financing, and has worked on project assignments in many Asian countries. He holds a PhD in financing infrastructure from IIT Delhi, a management postgrad from IIM Calcutta, and a Bachelor of Engineering from Birla Institute of Technology. Over to you, Mr. Purkayastha.
Good afternoon, and thank you, ESG Risk AI, for inviting me to the session. I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate ESG Risk AI for doing a pioneering work in India in terms of being one of the early entrants into the space of ESG risk assessments, and possibly subsequently will go up as one of the important service providers as the ESG risk assessment and ratings take a more formalized and a regulated role in India. While there are lots of service providers globally, and some of them have been active in India, ESG Risk AI has been a pioneer in this space of having rated or done a risk assessment of a large number of publicly listed companies across many, many sectors. So congratulations once again on this initiative, and I'm happy to express and talk about my views on the subject in this session. I would step back and go back to more than a decade ago when this concept of what ESG is taking shape today was about finance, was about capital moving to publicly listed companies which use public equities, public debt in terms of, and more so as a bank, as a banker or as a lender, to become a socially responsible lender. It was called equator principles. And those equator principles were about essentially looking into environmental, social, and governance safeguards, but they were called equator principles, to which a large number of global banks had signed into. And I think it was 2007 or 8, so it's essentially about 15 years ago. The concept from equator principles, which essentially talked about what is it where capital is flowing, are those companies exercising necessary environmental, social safeguards and have better corporate governance. And this was the framework which then subsequently evolved to sustainable banking, which was also a banking network, and then it went by the name of socially responsible investing. Of late, ESG, as it stands for environmental, social, and governance aspects, has taken some sort of a center stage, and the center stage has come in maybe more aggressively, and it's sharply increasing since the Paris Agreement in terms of climate change. So hence the presentation on ESG and climate change. And since I work in climate change, I would like to talk about the relationships and how does this move forward. Before I do that and get into the presentation, I want to make a couple of points. That it is about, ESG is about safeguards of capital moving into companies, moving into businesses, which does exercise and have good practices to take care of quote unquote social aspects, but it has got a lot to do also with how the company is run, how employees are treated, how labor is treated, how to a certain extent its business operations do not impinge and create harm for society at large. Governance is about, because public capital is used, public investments are used, is about good corporate governance in terms of representation, in terms of conflict of interest, in terms of proper use of capital, in terms of good fiduciary safeguards. So that's the genesis of ESG, and it's great to see that ESG is taking a center stage, and the issues of environmental, social, and governance safeguards are becoming increasingly important. Having worked in institutions, including rating agencies, I have a view that earlier, and as far as India is concerned, I do not think capital was bothered about social safeguards or governance at the first place. Capital was concerned about returns, and capital was concerned about whether, if it is a debt, whether there will be a debt service which will be effectively repaid. The concerns on social and governance in terms of whether the corporate existence was ensuring necessary safeguards was not a parameter in the evaluation in the providers of capital, either as investment or as debt. So this is a welcome move, in terms of a shift. And I think this has got, if this can have implications of ESG ratings, can have implications subsequently on the amount of capital that flows into a particular company or an investment, if it is exercised, if this were, and I see that ESG Risk AI tries to enable it in the manner as if almost this is an additional rating in addition to credit rating, which is, I think, a great approach, because that approach lends itself to a decision making on investment and decision making on debt. With this, let me open up the short presentation that I have, and why I call it an ESG and climate change is because primarily I see some overlaps and I see some confusion over here when we relate ESG and climate change. And this is what I'm taking the opportunity to explain. So if I can start here and go on to my next slide, as you can see, about 1/3 of the global institutional capital are monitored on ESG parameter. So this is a movement which you can see from this slide that it has significantly increased, and you can sharply see the movement upward from 2016 onward, and now it has almost come to a center stage in terms of all investable institutional market capital, whether it works on debt instruments or whether it works on equity. So there is a corporate evaluation of businesses in terms of how they're doing on ESG parameters. The question is, this is produced as a risk, as an uncovered risk, because a company taking care of certain aspects, certain social aspects, certain governance aspects gets a certain score, and the rest remains uncovered, and it is construed as a risk because there could either be regulation, there could either be a social, I would say, stakeholder concern on whether the corporate is taking care or not. And this brings me to my next slide, where I'm trying to link and explain the ESG factors of exposure management and controversies on environment, social, and governance. The slide is self-explanatory here. Environment is a wider term. It's not only carbon and climate, it's water, biodiversity, waste, marine sustainability. It's got to do with circular economy and so on. Social is community, employee diversity, human labor rights, employee health and safety, and possibly data security too. And there is corporate governance on board structure, executive compensation, code of conduct, conflict of interest, and so on. Corruption, proper fiduciary systems. Now there are a whole host of parameters which comes into an ESG, and we look at them together. Now let me turn to saying that while ESG is a great approach to direct capital towards sustainability, quote unquote, to my mind, these are necessary safeguards that needed to be exercised by capital, which was earlier not the case. And therefore, an ESG score at least provides that benchmark to do so. However, when we deep dive into E, and why am I deep diving into E? Because ESG and climate are related at some level, but more unrelated than related. And it is often construed. See, the basic point of why am I speaking over here, because I work in climate finance, is it tells you that there is probably an overlap, or probably is there a confusion. If you look at all the parameters in my earlier slide, you will find that only one of maybe 15 odd parameters is what links to climate. Climate is only concerned with emissions. So the E, which climate is concerned with, or climate change, is a factor which links climate change to ESG, is only the emissions parameter. And therefore, deep diving into E, if I deep dive further into E, you look at emissions, water, biodiversity. I've broken up emissions into carbon emissions, emissions intensity, carbon footprint, net zero target, renewable energy, energy offsets. And this is the space on the left of the screen on emissions that what we are concerned with in climate. Because ESG rating providers also are now tending to provide some sort of green or a carbon or some sort of emissions rating, which I think is again a welcome move. But where the waters get muddy is that ESG allows the world of capital to carry out, and policymakers to carry out, greenwashing, and which I think is my next slide over here is regulations and ESG are starting to emerge all around the globe. SEBI has done its job, and you can see that BRSR, which is an evolution of earlier business responsibility report, is focused on 9 parameters of, let me put it, good corporate practices, national voluntary guidelines, and each of those, there's one parameter on which talks about environment, or rather emissions. Of the 9, rest of them are about social safeguards, rest of them are about good corporate governance. Yes, good corporate governance is important. Social safeguards, as it is practiced, is also important. And so are environmental safeguards on water, on circular economy, on waste, on air pollution. All of them are important. But climate confusion with ESG needs to be changed. The confusion in the mind of providers of capital, either as debt or as any other financial instrument, of construing ESG as positive climate action, is some demystification, some explanation required. And this is, frankly speaking, this is not only India. This is and you can find a lot of discussion around ESG and greenwashing, because ESG, while for sure is a positive action forward, climate per se and emissions, just emissions needs a separate assessment, and just emissions needs a separate assessment. Now the question is whether ESG can do that within as a subset, or it needs to be a totally different approach. I currently do not know if the systems need to evolve. Now, what if SEBI has proposed to accredit ESG service providers for the purpose of assigning the type of ESG product is also been stated in terms of impact of company on the environment, or the impact of the risk that the company faces given the environment that is emerging. The ratings are supposed to be sector agnostic, but I think there's a caution statement prominently displayed on the website rating reports that ESG is not a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold, which is for sure it is. But I think a subsequent caveat is also required, that ESG, good ESG practice does not mean positive climate action. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Purkasta, for your wonderful acumen on the environment aspect. Our audience was thrilled to know the nuances, and I'm sure this would enable them to run more environmentally conscious businesses. Moving on, we now have Mr. Prasenjit Ghosh, Chief Operating Officer of ESG Risk AI and other subsidiaries of Equity Ratings and Research, to present the awards for the environment category.
Thank you, Sohini, for the introduction. Also, I thank all our speakers for their perspectives on the various aspects of ESG. As rightly highlighted by all our speakers, climate change is the major drive for companies to adopt greener operations. We have 8 awards within the environment category, and in this ceremony, I'll be announcing key breakthrough criteria under it. The rest can be accessed from our website and yearbook. The first award that I'll be announcing is for air pollution management. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big round of applause for JSW Energy Limited for the Best Air Pollution Management Award. Some of their air pollution management include the prohibition on the use of hydrochlorofluorocarbons and hydrofluorocarbons within their plants. They also monitor, measure, and practice the reduction of SOx, NOx, and PM10.
At the outset, let me thank ESG Risk for this award in the category of air pollution management. At JSW Energy, we are at the forefront of energy transition, building a portfolio of the most efficient and smart sustainable solutions. At JSW Energy, Our vision is to advance to a tomorrow where we are a 10 gigawatt company by 2025 and a 20 gigawatt company by 2030. Our incremental capacity additions are being completely made through renewable energy sources. With our central theme to promote a net zero strategy in energy production and consumption, we are constantly marching towards a tomorrow that encompasses the greater good. Through our established corporate governance practices and sustainability framework, we at JSW Energy consider effective management of air quality as an important part of our sustainability strategy. We have developed various plant level mitigations measures to control and release the gaseous emissions due to our operations. We have further set ourselves very stringent target to reduce our air pollutions by 60% by 2030 from a base year of 2020. As we continue our journey towards a net zero future, we aim to make use of our knowledge base and capabilities to create and support long-term solutions for environmental changes and progress towards a better tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Our next award is for Green Supply Chain. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Aditya Birla Fashion and Retail Limited to have won the Best Green Supply Chain Award. Let me share some of their initiatives. This includes the development of their own Supplier Sustainability Index to evaluate critical and high-impact supplier sustainability performance. They also source more sustainable materials and manufacture at factories that ensure environmental and social responsibility without affecting cost and quality.
It's our pleasure to receive this award for Best Supply Chain Award in ESG category. Thanks to Team Equity for acknowledging our effort in sustainability and ESG domain. We started our sustainability journey 1.0 in 2012 and made good progress on that resource efficiency. Now we are transiting into sustainability 2.0 for our product-centric approach to include product design development, supply chain and in customer centricity for our transformation of ESG into that entire value chain. Thanks once again Team Equity for giving this award to us and acknowledging our effort in this direction.
Next in line is Green Products and Services. Please give a big round of applause to Marico Limited for the best green products and services. Some of their initiatives include the usage of recycled materials for packaging and the promotion of dematerialization and elimination of hazardous materials in packaging. They have a special Samyut initiative, which is a responsible sourcing program aiming to source materials from responsible businesses that share Marico's sustainability vision.
On behalf of Marico Limited, I extend my heartfelt thank you to the organizing team for recognizing Marico's effort in the space of sustainability. As a consumer product company, we have been taking efforts in this space from many years. Our intent is to design green products, have green operations, so that we contribute to this important cause wholeheartedly and to the best possible extent. We have ensured that we use renewable energy in our operations. We are using life cycle assessment for our products to ensure the greenness of our products in terms of using green materials, sustainable materials, reduction in plastic consumption, and by ensuring that overall impact is on lower side. We have also extended our sustainability vision and sustainability goals to our suppliers through the program Samyut. And it has been an important and a very successful journey till then. Thank you very much once again.
The final award that I'll be announcing under the environment category is for waste management. I request all to give a big round of applause to Mahindra Lifespace Developers Limited for the Best Waste Management Award. Their significant initiatives in this area include disclosure of several types of waste generated in their operations, managing it, and reducing waste generation. They also have an effective strategy to divert waste from landfills. They have a 100% waste segregation plan for residential projects. Their project Mahindra World City Chennai was recognized as India's first certified zero waste to landfill city with a diversion rate of 100%.
We are honored to receive the Best Waste Management Award in the Environment category from ESG Risk Assessments and Insights. Mahindra Lifespaces, since 2011, has actively led the ESG transformation in the real estate sector. We are committed to building sustainable cities, sustainable offices, sustainable products, and sustainable communities. In 2020, Mahindra World City Chennai became the first city in India to be certified zero waste to landfill. And since then, we have extended our zero waste goals to all our construction sites and buildings. We encourage everyone to step up efforts on responsible resource consumption to enable value creation both for the present and for the future. We are committed to net zero energy, waste, and water buildings by 2030. Once again, thank you for this honor and this recognition from ESG Risk AI.
With this, we conclude the environment category of our awards.
Now that we have our E or environment category award winners announced, it's time for the S or social category. However, before that, we have our next speaker, Ms. Sukhman Randhawa. Ms. Randhawa is the Development Coordination Officer, Partnerships and Development Finance in the United Nations Resident Coordinator's Office, where her focus is on creating and supporting strategic partnerships for the UN system towards the 2030 agenda. Her previous roles includes Strategic Partnership Specialist at UNDP and Chief of Staff in the Office of the Advisor to the former Indian Prime Minister on Public Information Infrastructure and Innovation. Prior to that, she also worked at the National Knowledge Commission, Government of India. During her stint in the government, Ms. Randhawa supported policy development and implementation in areas ranging from education and skill development to inclusive innovation and financing, as well as digital public infrastructure. She holds 2 master degrees from the University of Cambridge and from the Harvard Kennedy School of Public Administration, in addition to a bachelor's degree from St. Stephen's College, New Delhi. I would now request Ms. Randhawa to share her thoughts on the social aspects that businesses need to focus on.
Good evening, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be a part of the ESG Awards as a speaker. And I would like to begin by thanking Mr. Dhruba for sharing his views on decarbonization strategies and how India can achieve net zero targets. Now, nearing the halfway mark, the 2030 Agenda and SDGs remain as relevant as ever as the world's compass and lodestar for navigating global turbulence. It's been said that nearly half of the SDGs live in India, and if they're achieved in India, they will be achieved globally, and also the reverse is true. And India's business sector is increasingly dynamic and becoming a global leader in sustainability. We need bold investments and innovations from companies to translate the SDG vision into solutions that will profit the people, the planet, and the bottom line. Today, businesses are increasingly understanding that there is no profit without economic sustainability. Climate change poses one of the biggest risks to the survival of businesses. Sustainability is a way of managing these risks, systemic and emergent. The depletion of resources, whether it's changing agricultural patterns, disaster, businesses that adapt better just do better. Further, even customers are increasingly more conscious of their footprint and expectations. They want products and services that can stand to a higher ethic and at the very least do no harm. The IFC has found that companies with good environmental and social performance outperform others on both equity and return on investments. Not only that, sustainable business will also have dividends for national economic growth. Sustainable development models could open new markets worth up to 12 trillion and create 380 million new jobs worldwide by 2030. Returns on investments that can be generated by the full implementation of SDGs could be approximately US 30 billion per year. The economic impact of achieving gender equality in India is estimated to be US 7 billion of added GDP by 2025. And sustainability is not just about CSR and the 2% mandate. It is about redefining the shareholder itself. There is a direct stake in the profitability and in the social and environmental impact of businesses on communities, on ecosystems, cities, and towns, and on the millions of people whose lives are touched by global value chains. And therefore, corporate value cannot be measured just in the arithmetic of supply and demand. It must include environmental value and social value and the strategic integration of SDGs into the very core of business models. The United Nations country team is working with the private sector across a wide range of areas in all the regions of India. And business is a critical partner for us in our new cooperation framework, which will start from 2023. The UN works in 5-year cooperation frameworks with the government, and we are entering a new cycle next year. And we hope business is going to be a critical player with us in this new development compact that we are going to be entering. To give you just a few examples of how the UN is engaged with the private sector, UNDP and Renew Power are working with Seva in Gujarat to train salt pan workers as solar technicians. In Bangalore, UNDP is working together with SAP Labs to empower women and young people with critical digital skills, aiming to reach 20,000 youth and 5,000 women. UNDP has also been focused on mobilizing financing to meet the SDG financing gap by launching an SDG finance facility to act as a bridge between private and government partners and to help design and develop innovative financial instruments such as social impact bonds. UNESCO is working with Indian hotels such as the Taj Hotel Group to promote sustainable and tangible cultural heritage, preserving and promoting living heritage and the culture of India. The UN Resident Coordinator's Office, which I'm representing, and UNEP are working with Reliance and the Indian fashion industry to promote sustainable fashion through the Lakme Fashion Week and Circular Design Award, encouraging circularity in the fashion industry, which contributes up to 8% of GHG emissions. For example, a Circular Design Award winner called I Was a Sari makes clothing and accessories from repurposed saris and has partnered even with Gucci. Several agencies in the UN system are working with tea producers to improve the lives of plantation workers. 85% of tea estates engaged by UNICEF under the Ethical Tea Partnership, including Tata, Tesco, Starbucks Foundation, now have family-friendly policies. And there are also many new emergent areas for partnerships, especially in tech. The field of AI and the ethics in AI in particular is a focus for UNESCO. In fact, in the morning, I was just at a meeting on supply chain and how to enhance sustainability through that. The government has aimed to align the national voluntary guidelines on social, environmental, and economic responsibilities of business with the UN Guiding Principle on Business and Human Rights through national guidelines on responsible business conduct, which were launched in 2018, and the mandatory business responsibility reports for the top 1,000 listed companies on SEBI. These are all steps in the right direction, but the need of the hour are more targeted collaborative platforms that bring together the collective expertise of the private sector in alignment with the SDG agenda and improved integration of SDG parameters into core business operations so that there is shared value propositions built for all. There's also a need for creation of impact frameworks or tools to measure the impact of businesses on SDGs. Further, a majority of Indian businesses are MSMEs. Around 70% employ less than 10 people, yet these businesses contribute less than 40% of GDP. Supporting and guiding the MSME ecosystem, around 63 million companies in India, towards sustainability will be an enormous challenge. And this is something that requires urgent attention. Extensive research confirms that sustainability and strong environmental, social, and governance practices are linked to lower operating costs, more profitable businesses, and higher share prices. Sustainability as a core value of business will bring billions of people out of poverty, empower women, combat disease, malnutrition, and unemployment, and secure the dignity of future generations. Lastly, I would like to say that it's really great to see how ESG Risk AI, India's first ESG rating provider, is providing a sustainable assessment tool for unlisted companies, private entities, MSMEs, and MFIs by identifying critical risk areas, understanding the ESG performance and ESG gaps of corporates. And finally, I'd like to end by congratulating all the award winners who are paving the path towards a more sustainable future for our country. Thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to the interactions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Randhawa, for that eye-opening speech. We all have known some new things about socially responsible businesses. As mentioned by Henry Ford, a business that makes nothing but money is a poor business. With that thought, let us move on to the awards for the social category. May I request Mr. Ghosh again to let us know all the winners rich in the social category.
We have 6 awards under the social category. While it is a mandatory requirement for all companies to allocate 2% of their profits to corporate social responsibility, the leaders in this category have truly gone above and beyond to make an impact. I'll be highlighting some of the key exemplary performances by the winning companies. The list of all the award winners under the social category can be viewed on our yearbook as well as on our website. Starting with equal opportunity, please put out your hands together for Max Ventures and Industries Limited for the Best Equal Opportunities Award. Their initiatives in this space include their non-tolerance towards gender, color, religion, caste, or creed-based discrimination. They also report their aspiration to increase female employee strength and add new female employees every year.
It is indeed a pleasure for Max Estates Limited, 100% subsidiary of Max Ventures and Industries Limited, to be honored with an award for Best Equal Opportunities in the social category at the ESG India Leadership Award 2022. Our purpose is to enhance quality of life through the spaces we create, and we have chosen to do that by developing sustainable commercial and residential developments in Delhi NCR as a region. Max Estates strongly believes that the growth of an organization critically depends on attracting, nurturing, and retaining talent. And to do so, enabling holistic well-being of talent is critical. We, through our policies and actions, are curating the organization culture that deeply cares for interests of people who work with us, which translates into credible governance, good economic performance, and positive work environment. We are guided by a code of conduct where any incident of discrimination based on gender, color, religion, caste, or creed is not tolerated, and diversity is genuinely encouraged and valued. We thank you, ESG.ai, for recognizing our continued effort and honoring us with this award. Thank you.
The next award is for product quality. Ladies and gentlemen, request you to felicitate Apollo Hospitals Enterprises Limited with a big round of applause for the Best Product Quality Award. I now highlight some of their major initiatives, which include India's first hospital to be awarded ISO 9008 certification. They have implemented a quality program to enhance safety practices across all their hospitals. They also have an overall patient satisfaction rate of 96%.
We are delighted and honored to receive the Best Product Quality Award as part of the ESG Risk.ai's award ceremony on ESG. This is indeed a very proud moment for us, as the patient satisfaction scores of product quality and other such parameters have been awarded, have been identified, and have also been showcased through this award ceremony. We are also very delighted that the work of our frontline warriors have been recognized through these awards. We at Apollo are very clear in our commitment towards our patients and the larger community that we serve, and also in mind, keeping this in mind, that our doctors, our frontline warriors and other related staff are also encouraged to do their best. We feel that ESG and sustainability will become a greater movement within healthcare, and we are happy that such awards and recognition will propel us to do more and for the entire health sector to do more. So once again, on behalf of Apollo Hospitals, thank you very much.
The next award that I'll announce under the social category is for data privacy and security. Please put your hand together for Wipro Limited to bag the Best Data Privacy and Security Award. Some of their initiatives include their cybersecurity policies and practices, their information security management systems, and conducting data security audits. They have a well-defined process to handle subject access requests related to personal data, to cater to the suspicious activity report requirements, and implementation of a 24/7 personal incident management process to ensure speedy governance of personal data-related incidents. Their mandatory data privacy awareness and refresher sessions for all employees and ISO 27001 certified IT infrastructure, which provides assurance in the areas of information security, physical security, and business continuity, and benchmarking their processes to meet the European Union's GDPR compliance requirements.
Hello, my name is P.S. Narayan, and I lead global sustainability for Wipro Limited. On behalf of Wipro, I'm happy to accept the recognition from ESG AI for our leadership in data privacy. We all know that one of the cornerstones of ESG is trust and transparency. And data privacy is really about building trust with your stakeholders, whether they are customers, your suppliers, your employees, investors, etc. So responsible stewardship of data in this pervasively digital world that we live in is at the heart of not only data privacy, but in building a mature digital enterprise. So thank you very much. We think that this award will encourage us to build on what we've done so far and to continuously improve and transform ourselves. Thank you.
The final award that I'll be announcing under the social category is for employee development. I'm pleased to announce that HDFC Bank Limited has won the Best Employee Development Award. Please put your hands together to recognize their initiatives in this space. I would highlight some of their significant initiatives, which include 106.7 man days per employee training and partnering with academic institutions for employee development. They have taken a talent review council initiative, which meets twice a year to analyze employee feedback and address their concerns. Their Spark program acts as the first step towards building a structured approach to leadership development.
Hi. At the outset, I'd like to thank the organizers for the honor of this award that has been given to HDFC Bank. Thank you. At the bank, we believe that ESG is the core and the heart of our very organization. The bank has invested tremendously in working towards our environmental and governance goals across the country. But I must say that one of the most important things for the bank is the employees. And our social objectives become that much more important, starting at the very employee. In the last 2 years, all of us have seen that the most important need for the bank is to nurture, care, and collaborate with each and every employee. The bank has done that in a very, very organized and well-developed fashion. We have invested a lot in technology, in connecting with our employees, digital training, in-person training, you name it, and we have worked on it. We have also made sure that our diversity and inclusion goals are at the heart of all our recruitment. We ensure that we have a very diverse population, and to make it happen, we have a lot of programs running within the bank, including Pleasant Parenthood, Nurture, Care, Collaborate, and so on and so forth. But above all, like I said, the employees are what matters. They are the true gold that the bank values, and we have to ensure that that is what gives us the commitment and the energy that the bank needs for the future growth. But today, I would just like to thank the recognition that the bank has got, and I am deeply honored to receive this award on behalf of all the employees and the bank. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ghosh, for announcing the social category winners. Now that we have our E, S, and G category award winners announced, it is now time for sharing our insights on India Incorporation's ESG performance. I would request Mr. Ghosh to again take us through some of these interesting findings and unveil the ESG Yearbook, an Indian Perspective 2022. Mr. Ghosh, please take over.
Thank you, Sohini, and great insights shared by our eminent speakers. As mentioned by Usha ma'am, COVID-19 has made us realize a number of things, including the importance of sustainable business practices and the need of having business continuity plan for companies. I sincerely believe that companies to truly prosper shall not only excel on the financial metrics, but also positively impact the society and the environment they live in. For the next few minutes, we'll take you through some of the insights from our ESG research and analytics on 1,000 companies in India. In 2021, we had initiated coverage on NSE 500 companies. The average ESG risk score of these companies was 445 on a scale of 1,000. The leading company had a score of 738, and on the other extreme, we have seen a score of 217. Our unique transparency score, which depicts the disclosure levels of the companies, stood at 59%. On the right-hand side, we have looked at the individual performance of environment, social, and governance for these 500 companies and their growth over previous year. This year, we have further expanded our coverage to NSE 1,000 companies, and we continue to have the most comprehensive ESG coverage on Indian companies. We see the average score of these 1,000 companies have come down compared to the NSE 500 of the previous year. And this is primarily because for the bottom 500 companies, the adoption of ESG and their disclosures have been considerably lower. Our transparency score has only been around 50 for these 500 bottom companies. And while the leading company has a score of 745, the worst performing company has a score of just 68. However, compared to FY20, we see the average ESG risk performance of these 1,000 companies has seen a significant progress, and the mean ESG risk score has moved up by 26%. And we have further on the right-hand side of the screen, we have further drilled down this NSE 1,000 companies to see the relative performance of the large cap, the mid cap, the small cap, and the companies who recently had their IPOs. We see the large cap companies are significantly ahead from the rest. The newly listed companies are in their nascent stage of their ESG journey. And over a period of time, we expect them to provide better disclosures and show a stronger ESG performance. In fact, our findings show that on an average, 40% more disclosures are being undertaken by companies after being listed. Moving on, at ESGrisk.ai, we have a huge data lake where we have ESG data for 3 years on 1,000 companies across 1,000 indicators. In this slide, we have looked at the relative performance of the public sector entities against the private sector entities and the manufacturing sector against the service sector. We see that the public sector entities were a little ahead in FY19 compared to the private sector entities. But then subsequently, we have seen that the private sector entities, they have taken a lot of ESG initiatives and made a significant progress with a 27% increase in the average ESG risk score in a short span of 2 years. On the right-hand side, we see the manufacturing sector has been lagging behind the service sector. And as we dive deeper into the manufacturing sector, when we look at the environment, social, and governance for this manufacturing sector, we see the environmental performance has been significantly low, followed by the social factors. We have looked at some of the critical indicators under environment. And for example, carbon emissions per unit of revenue, we have looked at comparing the data for FY20 and FY21. And in FY21, we have actually seen that there has been a reduction in the carbon emissions per unit revenue by 6%, which really augurs well for this segment. And I'm sure as more and more companies work towards a net zero goal, we will witness a significant reduction in the carbon emissions. We have also looked at the renewable energy contribution. And while it has grown significantly in FY21 by 23%, it is still at around 20-21% in terms of the renewable energy contribution against the total energy consumed for the segment. However, we see that the leading company for this indicator, their renewable energy contribution is 90%. And we all know that as a country, we have set a target of 500 gigawatt of renewable energy capacity by 2030. And I'm sure in coming times, we'll see the renewable energy mix to move up significantly up. When you look at the waste recycling, the average waste recycled percentage for the manufacturing sector has been around 80%. And data says that certain companies are already recycling 100% of their wastage. On the contrary, while there is a scarcity of groundwater in our country, we have seen a downward shift in the water recycling practices by almost a staggering 21%. However, the leading company on this indicator has achieved a 90% water recycling capacity. Moving on, when we look at the female employee base under the social category, while we understand the female employee population in manufacturing segment, given the nature of its operation, will be lower, especially in the bottom of the pyramid. But we believe as we move up the hierarchy, the diversity will be more agnostic across sectors. And while we see that the managerial position has seen an uptick of 11%, we see a significant contraction in the senior management. Some of these insights gives us a sense of direction the manufacturing sector needs to take in order to improve in the coming times. And here we have assessed and plotted the ESG risk score industry-wise and its corresponding leading companies. And it throws very interesting insights. Now, there is a general perception in the minds of people that the polluting industries are not doing so well in the ESG segment. The graph shows a different picture. We see the leaders in most of these carbon-intensive and polluting industries are faring better than the average performance of the lesser polluting segment. For example, under petroleum, metals, or even civil engineering, the leading companies have outperformed the average of industries like banking and financial services, information technology, and so on and so forth. With that, I conclude my presentation. And for more such insights and facts, I would urge everyone to delve into the second edition of our yearbook that we are going to release now. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together as ESGRisk.ai releases the ESG Yearbook 2022, a detailed overview of India's ESG landscape. On this joyous note of the release of the second edition of our yearbook, I would like to take forward the event to its most awaited moment of declaring the leaders in the individual categories of environment, social, governance, and transparency, as well as the overall ESG Leadership Award 2022. One of the most crucial aspects of a company is the way it is governed. Board diversity plays a really important role Here, since a diverse board of directors positively influence a company's decision-making processes, effective risk management, and stakeholder alignment. A diverse board not only includes female members, but also members with different ethnic backgrounds, educational backgrounds, nationalities, and cultural backgrounds. Our winner of today's Board Diversity Award has a board with 25% women as against the regulatory requirement of one female director. The company's board diversity policy also includes several aspects apart from gender, like age, culture, educational background, ethnicity, professional experience, skills, and knowledge. All board appointments are made based on merit, keeping in mind the benefits of diversity at the board level as an essential element in supporting the attainment of the company's strategic objectives and sustainable development. This makes it stand out from the rest of the companies. Let's put out our hands together for this winning company, which is none other than Nesco Limited.
For over 7 decades, Nesco Limited has continued to consider environment, sustainability and governance as the most important drivers for overall growth of business and all its stakeholders. We are thankful to ESG Risk Assessments and Insights for recognizing and honoring us with ESG Leadership Award 2022 for leadership in board diversity. We stay committed to the cause, and this recognition will help us do better. Thank you.
Reducing carbon footprint, managing waste effectively, minimizing air pollution, and managing environmental impact are some of the crucial environmental management initiatives that many companies have undertaken. But one company stands out for doing more than most. This company is amongst the few to undertake science-based targets to reduce Scope 1 and 2 GHG emissions by 2030. It is 8x water positive and 2.5x plastic negative through the co-processing of plastic wastes in their kilns. Furthermore, the company has secured 5th position in the Dow Jones Sustainability Index 2021 among construction material companies globally. To recognize the initiatives, the award for Best Environmental Practices goes to Ambuja Cements Limited. Let us put our hands together to acknowledge and celebrate Ambuja Cements Limited, India's ESG leader in environment, for its outstanding performance. Community services, product quality and safety, employee safety and development, equal opportunity and human rights protection are some key aspects in the social category. This next company is committed to providing development opportunities to their employees and reskilling the workforce. Their gender diverse workforce has 38.6% female employees with a target of 41% by 2030. They currently have employed 620 persons with disabilities and have programs in place to support them. The company is committed to going local in order to strengthen their profile as an employer of choice for employees and take multiple initiatives to support the physical and emotional well-being of their workforce. It also undertakes multiple CR initiatives, one such being the Tech for Good initiative, which has empowered more than 80 million lives. To showcase these initiatives, the Best Social Leadership Award goes to Infosys Limited. Let us put our hands together to acknowledge and celebrate Infosys Limited, India's ESG leader in the social category, for its outstanding performance.
At Infosys, our endeavor is to maximize the human potential and to create the next opportunity for our employees, for clients, and our stakeholders. Due to our great focus on the ESG element of the organization, we have really looked at many aspects. For instance, look at diversity. We've now got almost about 39.6% women, which is the largest in the IT industry in India. We've also focused on really, a strong social focus for the community. through our Infosys Springboard, we are able to provide learning opportunities to many people. And now almost 6 million people are enrolled into Infosys Springboard. I think there are many areas that we want to, as a company, look at to ensure that our focus on both ensuring that the environmental, social, and our governance goals are met. At this point, I'd like to thank ESG AI for recognizing us and giving us this ESG Social Leadership Award. Thank you very much.
Disclosures and the integration of reporting standards are key to ensuring transparency to stakeholders that in turn increases corporate credibility. The award for overall best transparency practices is also conferred upon Infosys Limited to highlight their initiatives towards high disclosure rates and better reporting practices. The company complies with guidelines set by Companies Act 2013, Business Responsibility and Sustainability Reporting (BRSR), as well as is a signatory of the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures (TCFD). Furthermore, Infosys also complies with Global Reporting Initiative standards for the preparation of the sustainability report. Let us put our hands together to acknowledge and celebrate Infosys Limited, India's ESG leadership leader in transparency, for its outstanding performance and practices in disclosures and reporting standards.
The vision of our founders to earn the respect of our stakeholders is deeply etched into the ethos of Infosys. It is no wonder then that we have many firsts to our credit. From being the first Indian company to introduce ESOPs way back in '94, to publishing audited quarterly results, to voluntarily adopting GAAP, and many, many more, in addition to being the first Indian company to be listed on NASDAQ way back in 1999. In 2011, we committed to becoming carbon neutral on the global stage at the UN Global Compact, and we said we would do this by 2020. We achieved this goal and were recognized with the UN Global Climate Action Award in the Climate Neutral Now category. Of course, this provided a huge impetus to craft and launch our ESG Vision 2030 with bolder and even more ambitious goals for the future. In 2008, we published our first sustainability report using the GRI framework. In 2013, Infosys was among the first companies in India to publish the Business Responsibility Report together with our annual report. In 2014, we were the first company globally across IT companies to publish a sustainability report leveraging the GRI G4 comprehensive framework. All our sustainability disclosures are independently assured. On behalf of Infosys, it gives me great pride to receive this award for transparency in our disclosures. Thank you, ESG Risk AI, for recognizing our efforts.
Thank you. It was heartening to get an insight into our efficient practices towards a sustainable tomorrow. Now on to last but definitely not the least, our final award of the day, the overall ESG Leadership Award, recognizing excellence in environmental, social, and governance performance. This company is committed to achieving carbon neutrality by 2035 and water neutrality by 2022. Its board of directors is made up of 20% women and 50% independent members. It has initiatives in place to touch 13.79 lakh plus community members through its CSR activities and has already made 8.70 lakh plus community members aware of the potential of digital financing through its Digital Sakhis drive. Furthermore, the company has adopted global reporting initiatives GRI standards, as well as International Integrated Reporting Committee framework for the creation of its sustainability report. And the winner of today's ESG India Leadership Award 2022 is L&T Financial Services. I request you all to put your hands together for L&T Financial Services, India's overall ESG leader, for its commendable overall ESG performance and excellent practices in managing its environmental, social, and governance impact.
Financial Services is delighted to have been conferred the Best Overall ESG Leadership Award by ESG Risk AI. Sustainability is at the core of our commitment to people, business, and community that we operate in. In fact, when we unveiled our Lakshya for 2026, that is our very own Lakshya 2026, sustained growth through ESG was one of the 4 pillars. This just demonstrates our commitment towards adoption of sustainable practices in the manner that we operate. We will strive to remain ahead of the curve when it comes to sustainability, and recognition of this nature just gives a fillip to our efforts. I would like to thank ESG Risk AI for recognizing our efforts in the area of sustainability. Thank you.
Moving to our next speaker, we have Mr. Ramnath Iyer, the chairman of our award committee. Mr. Iyer is the co-founder of ESG Data and Solutions. Prior to co-founding ESGDS, he held leadership positions at organizations such as MSCI and CRISIL. He has over 25 years of experience in building scale and improving operating leverage across various business areas, including real estate and equity benchmarking, environmental social governance ratings, credit ratings, corporate research, and advisory.
Good afternoon, participants. Thank you so much for joining the ESG Risk AI's award ceremony. My hearty congratulations to all the award winners. As part of the Q&A sessions, we've received a number of questions on the ESG practices, the award methodology, and so on. Let me pick up and answer 3 of them that seem to be most pertinent to today's event. The first among them was a question on the dissonance of the rating scales. So the question is, what do you have to say about the ratings being so different for the same company when we are looking at different assessment providers? Yes, the divergence today is a fact. Let's take NTPC, for example. ESG Risk AI's rating for NTPC is BB, while MSCI's rating for the same company, NTPC, is CCC. So how do we go ahead and explain this kind of divergence? The answer actually is a little complex, but let me try and simplify it to the extent possible. One, there is a difference in the way materiality of risks are identified and assessed. Now, none of us can deny the fact that we will remain a coal-dependent, thermal power-dependent economy for a fairly long amount of time. Also, we all understand that India's commitment is not a net zero, but a reduction in emission intensity. So are we going to be able to say that we will wish away the fact that our economy is going to depend on coal? Or do we penalize NTPC for remaining a coal-fired power producer? In our case, the viewpoint is we should encourage NTPC to try and create more renewable energy sources. At the same time, we cannot unduly penalize them and say that they are perhaps the most abhorrent ESG performers by giving them the bottom of the scale in terms of the ESG. So yes, we will have dissonance in rating scale, but what we need to understand is the dissonance comes from the fact that there are economic realities. These economic realities are not really globally standardized. If you are trying to measure every company on a single global yardstick, then we will have to look at what is a global practice. On the other hand, we can choose to look at what are the economic realities of a country specifically, and then look at within those realities if a company is doing well relatively or not. So that is one of the reasons that you'll see a dissonance between the ratings assigned between rating providers for the same company. The other reason for the dissonance is what most people were asking in case of Tesla. Tesla was excluded from S&P's ESG index as was mentioned right in the beginning by Ms. Thorat. But Tesla also seems to be a company that seems to be taking a lot of lead in reducing tailpipe emissions. So how do you reconcile these two contradictions? The answer is simple. There are certain practices of Tesla that can be improved in terms of ESG. If that is a yardstick that is used for materiality, they don't qualify to be part of certain ESG indexes. At the same time, there is also the reality that Tesla is contributing to reducing tailpipe emissions. So what I have to say is, do not look at the dissonance. Look at what each of this parameter is measuring and how a company is faring on a parameter, and then try and make your own assessment out of the insights that are provided by the assessment providers. The second question that was asked is on the use of negative news or controversies in assessing a company's performance. The question was, is it prudent to use controversies, and how are controversies relevant? The answer to both is yes, it is prudent to use controversies, because controversy is a very important yardstick to understand if the risk mitigation practices of a company are working or not. So if a company has business ethics related controversies, then what is clear is the business ethics framework of a company does not work to the extent that it is advertised. So it is important for all the assessment providers to look at what controversies are related to a company's performance, associate a controversy with a weakness in a framework, and then evaluate if the controversies really merits a marginal or a substantial increase or decrease in the performance of the company, and hence the associated score. The third question is, what are the recent trends that we are seeing in terms of ESG adoption by Indian corporates? Here, what we are finding is that the trends in terms of performance is extremely encouraging. Like Shankar and subsequently Prasanjit mentioned in his summary from the compendium, we are seeing substantial differences in the way companies are adopting new technologies to mitigate ESG risks. So Indian companies are now relying on blockchain to look at chain of custody, look at the origin of products. They are trying to see how technology can be integrated as part of employee education and development. We are seeing community support and development depend on fair amount of technology integration. There is marginalized banking, there is rural banking that is coming about. So what we are seeing is companies are integrating ESG not as an add-on or a bolt-on. We are seeing increasingly Indian companies are integrating ESG as part of their business decision making and as part of their core operations. And this is what is going to set us or most successful companies apart, where it is not treated as an also to do checklist activity where you say that, okay, we have certain 2% CSR spend, we have done that, or these are the initiatives we need to take, and that is completed. What is really going to differentiate ESG leader are the fact that they are going to integrate it as part of their core operations. And most of their decisions are going to be based on how positive the ESG impact is going to be. And we are already seeing that gain a lot of traction with leading Indian corporates. Let me hand this back to the Master of Ceremonies. Given the paucity of time, I don't think we'll be taking more questions. Back to you.
Many congratulations to all the winners for making it big this evening. Before we part company, I would like to propose a vote of thanks to all our esteemed speakers for enlightening us with their insightful speeches. I also thank all our winners for timely sharing management views which were showcased this evening. I would also thank all the audience members who enthusiastically participated and witnessed these awards. You truly have been a wonderful audience. I thank the award committee for relentlessly guiding us to evaluate the best ESG performers across the 21 categories. Last but not the least, I thank the entire management and all my colleagues at ESG Risk AI and the entire Activity Group for giving me this opportunity to be your host for this evening. With this, we conclude ESG India Leadership Awards 2022. Please follow us on LinkedIn to get all ESG related updates. Thank you.